I'm going to start recording now. It's funny. I got this book in the mail as a professor, as an academic. I get books mailed to me by presses all the time, and I often don't pay attention. And this one was mailed to me by Verso, which is a very nice press, kind of, as you can imagine, left-wing socialist. And it sat on my bookshelf for a few weeks, and then I picked it up and read it, and I thought, geez, this is different. This is not something I have taught before. You guys want to tell me your general impressions of this book?
Rad.
Okay. How did this read? Was this okay?
Very quick, very flowy, very good.
Flowy.
Yeah, I was reading and also like following along with the audiobook at the same time.
Cool.
And I just felt like it was like a really nice way to like, I don't know, like the prose flows really well, which is really like enjoyable. Like it doesn't feel dense most of the time.
Nice. Audiobook.
Yeah, it feels like slightly conversational and like just more casual, which is kind of nice, especially in contrast to the other readings, which I really enjoy, but I think we're just like a lot denser. And also like, I don't know if it has anything to do with like the translation thing with a lot of the readings, just because so many of them are translated from another language, but I really like that. And I really like the kind of like sci-fi element that he brought up. Was super interesting. The way he made those connections I wasn't really expecting.
Are there sci-fi fans in the house? Yeah.
I appreciated the Star Trek connections.
I am very weak on sci-fi. I'm just warning you. Like Orwell's the only one I knew. Really. And Vonnegut, that's about it. But so much of what we're talking about, we're on the precipice of, is sci-fi like, it seems. So I guess that's part of his point. Like this is no longer out of the realm of possibility. Who knows what this economy is going to look like in the next 10, 20 years. I mean, who knows what any of this technology is going to look like? It blows my mind that we have these supercomputers in our pocket. You've heard it said many a time, I'm sure, but when I and your parents were in college in the 90s, I didn't have the internet, I used to write letters to my friends. Do you know what letters are? You take a fucking piece of paper, you spray some cologne on it, depending on who you're writing to, and then you start scribing. And then you fold that shit up, put an envelope, stamp it, and walk to the mailbox. There you go, Rachel. I used to do that my first year in college. I had all my addresses of my friends, and I sent them letters. Oh, sorry. Did I cut off somebody?
No, I was just going to say that my roommate from freshman year lives in West Palm Beach, and they've just been sending me letters like every single day. And I'm like, this is how it's supposed to be done.
I think your friend has time and loves you. So, I mean, it's, and if you had asked me a few years ago that I would tell me I'd be running this class on Zoom, I wouldn't have believed you. I was joking with some class, maybe it was this one, like the next incarnation of Zoom will all be holograms, right? Here you go. I'm flexing my sci-fi muscles here. We'll all be holograms. We'll shoot remotely into a classroom and we'll interact that way. And that would be weird. Right? Doesn't Michael Jackson have a hologram show in Las Vegas? So I'll take my hologram show on the road. Anybody else want to chime in about this book, how it read? Anything really shake you, stand out? Well, let's dive in. I mean, the big issue that I want to deal with two major issues. He tells us the opening. He says, Marx is a stoner philosopher. Yes. Yeah, I guess so. Huh? Um, I like Marx. The more and more I learn about Marx, I like him. One of these days, somebody should. I was thinking about this. I'm not qualified, but it's about time we had a book writing a defense of communism, right? Everybody takes for granted that communism failed because it had inherent failures. Maybe that's not the reason, maybe it was not such a bad idea that it was cracked up to be. I can't write it, Sean. I'm just saying, I think it's a good idea. I think an economist needs to write it. I'm not an economist, but I think it would be a good read. He opens this book here saying he's going to, talking about the twin anxieties of the 21st century economy, which, well, climate change and automation. I'm not sure how much those qualify as your twin anxieties. Climate change is on your radar, I'm sure. Students tell me this is an anxiety, but has automation been keeping you up at night before you read this book? Oh, really? Interesting. Never occurred to me. Maybe it should. It's kind of worse for me. If they automate philosophy professors, I'm 50, I'm screwed. I won't get hired again. Like, you're young, you can renegotiate for a different field. What am I going to do, automation, he tells us here at the beginning, it is beginning to reach out into professional and creative industries that seemed immune. And so I thought I would ask you all a question. Where have you seen automation ramp up? Where have you seen automation that maybe you didn't see it before? That kind of surprised you.
I was seeing in like a fast food joint in Chicago. You just go and put your order in, and then there's like this wall that's full of like little windows, little doors, and your order just comes and like you press the button and like the door opens, and I'm like, oh my God. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That does sound crazy. Which fast food chain is it? Is it a big one?
It was called Wow Bao, actually.
Okay, don't know it.
Yeah, no, I think there is one like somewhere in Maryland, because I was like, I liked it so much. Like I looked at where else they had it. There is one in Maryland, I think.
Okay. Cool. Anybody else? I'll go next. I saw it recently. I went to, do you guys know Towson Hut Bagels, THB? There is one in Charles Village near Hopkins. I go to the original THB because I live in the Towson. And I went there, and usually when you go to Towson Hot Bagels, there's a big line at the door and there's a ton of people behind the counter taking your order, cooking stuff. I went last week, everybody was gone and replaced by a bank of computers. You walk in and you boop, 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 put your order in and just stand to the side. Kind of blew me in my mind at the time. I didn't expect to see that there. Anybody else? Where you have seen the automation ramp up?
I worked at Starbucks for like 4 years, and like they didn't debut it while I was there, but like mobile ordering and paying is like a new-ish thing in like food service, where people just download whatever app on their phones and order it from their phones and then just go to the store and pick up whatever they ordered.
Yeah.
It completely bypasses like any need to communicate with anyone. And it's basically the same concept, only a little bit more extreme in that, you do it from your phone, which you have in your pocket at all times, which is kind of, I don't know, it's just kind of crazy. And like the longer I worked there, the more percentage of sales was becoming diverted towards mobile ordering and paying.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy.
Olivia, I need to hear about this random robot because I go to the Giant.
Yeah, I don't know if it's everywhere, but there's like a Giant, it's like maybe it's a super Giant, and it has like this one robot that just like, I think it's supposed to clean things up, but it doesn't. It just kind of like rides around, and it's very odd. Yeah, it's at select ones. It's like very tall, and it's kind of funny, but it doesn't really serve any purpose. It's just kind of like follows people around. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. It's not stocking shelves, is it?
No, it doesn't.
No.
It
Okay.
doesn't have. It just has wheels. Like it has nothing. There's no arms or anything. It just goes through the aisles.
Doesn't
I
it
don't
have giant
Yeah,
googly eyes?
Oh, it has cameras.
No. Giant googly eyes.
know. Like
I don't
people
think they're
stick things
cameras.
on it. Like yeah, I don't know. It's great. It's great.
I have noticed speaking of the grocery store, I don't know if this has occurred to you, but I'm always perplexed. There is a whole row of checkout counters and there's like nobody in them. And then you have to go check yourself out and that's always full and there's a big ass line. And then the fucking machine's like, oh, put the thing in, those things are awful, right? Like if I lift the bag up, they say, put the bag back, oh, I want to strangle the damn machine. Yes, Rachel.
While we're on the topic of self-checkout and Giant, at my family's local Giant, there's a new self-checkout that came about during the pandemic where it's self-checkout, but not for like 15 items or fewer. It's like the full conveyor belt and you can put all of your stuff on it and then you scan and bag everything yourself. And it's like weighted. So like every time you take stuff off of it, it moves the conveyor belt for you. Like I just thought that was really cool. And then going with the robot, that reminded me of the Amazon warehouse robots. And I'm like, all I think about them like injuring employees. So I don't really get what they're for.
Well, I am a little worried. Chloe mentions there's a train at Wegmans. I don't go to Wegmans, so.
It's not actually automated or a real train at all. It's just like a little track above the dairy section for no reason that has a little toy train on it, and it makes me happy.
Oh, okay. That's totally different then. That's harmless.
Yeah, speaking of Amazon, I don't know if this counts as automation or if it's even new, but I've noticed that whenever like because of all the package delays, they've given you a chance to automatically refund yourself on everything, and they don't really check or care if you actually got the items as long as it's below a certain dollar amount.
Really?
So like if your stuff is arriving like I don't know, like 4 days late and it was a prime shipment, it's supposed to arrive in 2 days, you can check back and basically get a refund. And I did that because I was really frustrated, and then it ended up showing up like 3 days later, and you can just keep the item. So,
well, damn, that's impressive. Okay. I see Teresa put something here in the chat. Teresa, is that about the robot? The giant robot?
Giant, yeah. It
Oh,
like
cool.
apparently recognizes like messes or something, so then an employee can come and clean it up.
Yeah, good. Okay.
If you click on it, you'll see that it has giant googly eyes.
Jessica, why are you mentioning the silencing?
Oh, just because like it doesn't work very well at all. And so you could just like make it shut up if you wanted to.
Oh.
And now you can't. So it's just constantly yelling at you the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. A lot of the story behind a lot of the rationale for automation is convenience. But for who, right? I don't often find it convenient for me.
Yeah, like they still need to employ someone to make it work properly.
And you know who I feel sorry for? The person in charge of the self-checkout stations. Have you noticed that person has to run around and like, oh my God, I would shoot myself.
Every single time I use it, it tells me like at least twice that I need to remove something from the bagging area because it's supposed to be there. And it's like, it's all supposed to be there. I don't know what you're talking about. And then the person and I like share a little laugh because they know just as well as I do that it doesn't friggin' work.
That's right.
The only good one is Home Depot. They because you're buying stuff like plywood and whatever, and you can't put it on a little rinky-dink piece of metal to tell you that your plywood exists. They give you a price gun. And you can just buy whatever you want, and you could technically walk out the door and not pay for something if you if you really wanted to shop like that.
I'm seeing a pattern here, Daniel. I'm getting worried.
I mean, I buy everything.
I'm joking. I'm just kidding.
But I'm just saying, like there are some instances where it's good. I mean, even Grubhub, I got an order and they're supposed to give me a drink and fries or something, but there was no option to complain about there not being like a side order. So I just said that the whole sandwich wasn't there and they just refunded me. So like, just take advantage of it. If they can't help you the appropriate amount, it's okay to be helped a little bit more, I guess.
Nice. Rachel, what's up?
I know the moment's passed, but I was just gonna say that at self-checkout, one time I inserted a bill before you
Oh, Rachel,
pay
you're
with
freezing
cash,
up.
and
Rachel,
so it sucked up my $20 bill, and
Uh-huh.
it didn't pay for it, so I had to have. Am I okay now?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, maybe not.
I had to be entire part me my $20 bill. That was it.
Oh, we did lose you. Maybe put it in the chat. Sorry. Technology. Again, failure. Tech fails sometimes.
I feel like I haven't really seen much automation in my own life. Like the grocery store thing is really the only like common one. I don't know. Like I don't really know anyone who drives a self-driving car or yeah, I'm just really not sure.
They're not
what else
legal yet,
is,
right?
like,
Those aren't legal. They're not
they're
there.
not legal yet?
No, no.
Oh.
No, those are like 5 years out at least, if not 10.
I thought Tesla had self-driving capabilities.
It's autopilot mode. You can use it on the highway to stay a certain speed and then turn in your lane. But like legally, your hands need to be on the wheel and you need to be awake. So it's not really like it's self-driving, but with an asterisk.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, Ella Kate points out ATMs. They're everywhere. One thing what's happened in the pandemic, and this speaks to the economic issues. I use Bank of America, and here in Towson, the two closest branches for me have just been shut down. They've completely closed. They left their ATM open, and now the only branch with people working in it is like 10 miles away, and I got to go all the way up there. So there we go. They're closing shops. But yeah, I mean, the automated cars are coming. When you speak of automation and employment, one of the more talked about plans is truck drivers, right? I don't think he mentions it. I'm not sure why. Maybe that was a discussion that came up after he wrote the book, but if this might be an interesting research paper for somebody for your final, but there are a lot of plans to talk about getting truck drivers off the roads. Why is that? Well, truck driving is a very stressful job. Truck drivers, can you imagine driving for 10, 12 hours through the night, a big rig like that? I mean, there's no wonder they take drugs on occasion. I wouldn't be able to do it without drugs. And then, of course, they're hazardous on the road. So if we're going to automate cars, automating trucks sounds like a great idea. But there are 70,000 people who drive trucks. So you're going to have 70,000 people with good paying jobs that are out of work like that, right? So how's that going to go, right? This leads to the discussion, what jobs is automation coming for? He talks about the example of farmers in California. They're investing in robots that can pick fruit. Why are they doing this?
Because the potential use of technology is less expensive than the workforce, like the human workforce. So they feel like it would be more profitable in the long term to have automated labor than
Who
human
picks our
labor.
good? Who picks our fruits in California, everybody?
Isn't a lot of it like illegal immigrants that are being underpaid? So basically, you either continue with human rights abuse or find an equally cheap, if not cheaper, method.
Yeah. Yeah, typically the robots don't come for the cheap jobs. In this case, it's an issue of availability, right? Illegal immigrants who we rely on, what if this workforce becomes unreliable, we can't rely on them anymore, they're not available, or there is simply a human rights complaint that makes it untenable. I want to call your attention to this quote at the top of page 8. The reason this quote is good is because he really exposes, the logic of automation. He says the economic logic. This development illustrates a recurrent capitalist dynamic. As workers become more powerful and better paid, the pressure on capitalists to automate increases. When there is a huge pool of low-wage migrant farm labor, a $100,000 fruit picker looks like a wasteful indulgence. But when workers are scarce and can command better wages, the incentive to replace them with machinery is intensified. I mean, America has always relied on its immigrants to do the dirty work, right? What happens, and then each successive generation graduates to different types of work that their fathers, that they won't do anymore, right? That they won't do what their fathers and mothers did. But this cannot go on indefinitely, right? Who's going to clean this up? Who's going to do that kind of work? Sorry, my mind was migrating. I'm thinking I was in Paris 2 summers ago, and they don't even, they don't have street cleaners anymore because they can't find people who do that job. So they have these things called, I think it was called motocrotte, these little machines with a brush that go along the curb and just suck everything up. And there is one dude in there, not a great job, but it was a little funny, but picking vegetables, working in farm factories, like those, like the giant warehouses where our chickens are raised. That is not nice work. That's the kind of work that illegal immigrants do. And when that labor force has, moved on to other work, then what are we going to do? So that's when the automation seems to make sense. But it also means that on top of it, what this points out is that automation, it's going to come for jobs people don't want to do, but it's also going to come for the high-paying jobs. It's going to come for high-paying jobs because employers are going to want to look for a way, like an end around those workers. Employers are going to want to look for some negotiating power, right? Against high-paying workers. So it's setting up an interesting dynamic that we're going to talk about. As we'll see in the next chapter, automation isn't necessarily going to take away the low-paying jobs because there's not as much of an incentive. There's not as obvious an incentive for them to be automated. I mean, they certainly can be if we have no more immigrants available, for example, but it looks like the dynamic of automation is that it may be coming for higher paying jobs, which is interesting. And not only manual jobs, not only manual labor, as we'll see. Automation, he also notes that automation is something that we see throughout capitalism, right? It's always been this way. The story of capitalism is the story of automation. Why? Because the bourgeois capitalists are always looking for ways to increase productivity and at the same time undermine the bargaining power of labor. But he tells us, curiously, that like automation has kind of stalled the last 30 or so years. Why is that? What has happened over the last 30 or so years?
The rate of productivity has not increased the way that people thought it would with the introduction of automation.
That is true. But that's related. That is a point he makes, and that's related to the point, however, that automation hasn't really, here's the point, automation hasn't really kicked into high gear. This stuff we're talking about here, Starbucks and Wow Bao and the Giant, this is small potatoes. The capability is there for much, much more, but it hasn't kicked into high gear yet. Why?
I think it's because I think I remember reading about like after the Cold War or something, and like just with globalization, there's been a huge amount of like cheap labor available. So there's no like monetary incentive to automate yet.
It's globalization. That's essentially it. What globalization has delivered is a glut of cheap labor. That's what globalization delivered, right? And so that kind of slowed the ramping up of automation. So, you know, the story of globalization from the point of view of American factories is this. Through the 60s and 70s, unions were making great gains. Factory workers were doing quite well. The companies had to contend with very powerful unions. Then, in the 1980s into the 90s, these corporations discovered that they could outsource the labor to places like China and Taiwan. That's where they started. And in so doing, they immediately undercut the unions and basically brought them to their knees. What they did for the consumer side is that they dropped the price of goods immensely so that stuff for us is just crazy cheap. Okay. I don't know if I mentioned this class, but economists used to talk about something called the Walmart effect. Walmart effect. And the Walmart effect is this. Walmart is, of course, a big outsourcing engine, right? Because Walmart is so powerful, they have so much shelf space. They are the single most important retailer for most manufacturers in America. Walmart is the most important manufacturer. So if you're selling anything, and there's notorious stories about this. One of the most I think we talked about Black & Decker. One of the most notorious stories about, you guys know Huffy Bikes. They were based in Ohio. Did I talk about this? I can't remember. Huffy was selling bikes to Walmart, and Walmart said, your bikes are great, but they're too expensive. And Huffy's like, well, we can't make them any cheaper. And Walmart's like, you need to outsource. You need to leave Ohio. And Huffy did. And Walmart essentially did the same to Black & Decker as well. And then, of course, those goods were produced much more cheaply. They come back to the States. And the Walmart effect refers to how when Walmart moves into a market, like a region like Baltimore or Columbia, or I don't know, like Houston, or even a small town, suddenly every single retailer that is competing with Walmart, they have to do what? They have to drop their prices precipitously if they want to play ball. So the Walmart effect, actually, this is something that economists have debated at great length. There are economists who argue this has been a great boon for consumers. Thanks to Walmart's bullying power, they drag the Giant and the Home Depot of the world down. And so everybody has to compete with Walmart, they have to have low prices. But of course, now we know how they did that, right? They did that by destroying manufacturing jobs in America and outsourcing them. To automation, the issue is we have had globalization has delivered a flood of cheap labor over the last 30 years that has forestalled any kind of impetus for these companies to automate. Well, at least, you know, on these shores, right? I guess all eyes now should be on China to see as their middle class grows and as their workers have greater bargaining power, if that becomes to pass, then two things are going to happen. One of two things: either those factories will automate further and replace those workers, or the outsourcing will migrate to the next set of cheap countries, which I suppose many people are expecting might be Africa. Okay. So good. Keep in mind, you know, the general point is that we haven't, this is the tip of the iceberg. We haven't really seen the full incentive to automate yet. I mean, think about it this way. You know, one thing that automation does is that it makes workers redundant, right? The British term, it puts them out of work. And then you have the workforce becomes, you know, the people out of work, there's a lot of them. So it makes it easy. It makes it easier to get cheap labor. And that kind of slows down the impetus to automate. It'll be really interesting to see now, thanks to, you know, I don't know if you guys have been reading about this, but the economy is really heating up. This year, it looks like it's going to be very, very robust growth. In fact, unemployment is plummeting. Well, as what they call this, the job market, as the labor market tightens, that means the cost of labor will go up. That might prove an incentive for corporations to automate more. Where that will be, I don't know. That's you know that I leave that to your imagination. We might see at the Giant, you might see robots, not just, what was that robot doing? What was that? That robot was looking for spills. I think you might see robots stocking, you know, or maybe robot butcher. You want to get a cut of meat and the robot's there ready to. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe a robot can't be a butcher because, you know, I have pretty specific taste what I want. Anyway.
No, the butchers are essential. My grandma always said you gotta be friends with your butcher.
I like your grandma. I agree. Good. Now, about automation, again, let's talk. One of the arguments pro. Why are some economists not so scared of it? What good can come of it, everybody?
Some economists believe that past trends of automation show that when a field is automated, then kind of automatically a new field that either isn't or cannot, quote unquote, be automated opens up.
Cool. Good. Yeah, Sean says new jobs. Like what? Anybody have any ideas? Or maybe you give an example.
A technician for the robots.
That's what I was thinking. I was only thinking. I mean, by your description, Chloe, you made it sound like there's going to be a whole new field that opens up where you need human contact. But really, the only thing I can think of is robot builder, robot repair person. This is on page 14. He says it frees up labor for other better kinds of work. And right, Teresa gives the example of in the past, the story was about agriculture. You know, at the turn of the previous century, before you had harvesters, like, you know, combine harvesters and tractors, farm work was labor intensive. You want to know how labor intensive, what it looked like? Go drive by your local Amish farm and you'll see what the old fashioned farms used to look like. I don't know if I've told, Have we discussed the Amish in this class? That's one of my top 3 topics that I love to talk about. My dad lives near a Amish farm. Good. I won't rattle on too long, but they got their oxen out and they have their children out with their hats and picking the produce, which is what all children should do. And then suddenly that becomes mechanized and you have a cheap labor force. They migrate to the cities. They populate our factories. In the United States, they help the industrial engine rev up, especially through World War II when that was needed. And then those jobs become, those are not nice jobs, right? Farming jobs? That's tough, man. Anybody farmed over here? Farmers in the house? Thought so. Oh, whoa, Chloe, farmer in the house. Okay. I'm a gardener.
A class right now called Baltimore Urban Farming.
Okay. That might qualify. Chris has done some. I'm a big gardener. I can tell sometimes, I can tell you guys, gardening is very frustrating. I have a gigantic groundhog that has set up shop outside my garden. I'm already filled with anxiety for the summer. If I had to live off of my own produce, this would be rough business. Farming is hard. Migrating to the factories. Factory work, not so fun, right? Either redundant or hard. Yes, Chloe, compost is difficult. And then from there, people migrated to the service industry. I think Micah folk, that's the kind of labor we have done. Enjoyable, fun, doing this for long. Probably not, right? How would you like your coffee, sir? Right? Venti, tall? No. After a while, I waited tables for 2 years in college and I was like, fuck this, it's. So the story of automation is that it slowly, will take over the jobs that are not fun. And then we can migrate to fun jobs that we enjoy more. Yeah? How's that sound? Does that sound okay so far? Anybody have any comments? Or is everybody thinking of robot waiters?
Terrible service.
Sometimes I felt like a robot when I was a waiter, I had all these I gotta get ranch dressing for table 3, Pepsi for table 2, God, robots, they wouldn't have a problem. They would have it down. Good. So, it's funny. Science fiction is funny sometimes when you look back, right? And think about how people perceive the future. Did we talk in this class about, I think I was telling you all about Blade Runner, what 2019 looked like, which is a gas. But, John Maynard Keynes, he has a quote from John Maynard Keynes. Keynes is a big deal. In the 20th century, Keynes is considered, he's a British economist, he's considered to be the counterpart and the intellectual opponent of Milton Friedman, who we've read in this class. We don't read Keynes. The reason we don't read Keynes is because he's boring. You would shoot me if you had to read Keynes, but he's so important. He's vitally important. So I'll feed you Keynes on the second hand. Keynes was largely in favor of an expansive, active government in the economy. Remember, Friedman says government should have no role. That was not Keynes. Keynes believed that the government should have a very robust role. He was not an enemy of the welfare state, things like that. But Keynes has a beautiful quote of Keynes here. I mean, one of the visions of automation is it's going to suck up all the dirty jobs and more, right? Until, here you go. This is the middle of page 15. John Maynard Keynes in the 1930s, he thought people in our time would work as little as 15 hours a week, right? Oh, those people in 2021, they're going to have it so good. when we're done with all these robots, they're going to kick back, work 15 hours a week. What do you think of that?
The dream.
A dream. I have two very important questions for you. I'll start with the first one. Really? A dream? Is anybody filled with like a little bit of anxiety? I'll be honest, I get a little nervous when I hear that number, but I'll talk later. I'm just curious. I mean, is it really a dream? Yeah? How's that? All right, Jessica, you spoke up. You say why. Defend yourself.
I mean,
You're gonna crochet, I guess, right?
Yeah, I don't know about anybody else in the room, but I got hobbies.
You guys are the wrong crowd to talk about this with, probably, because artists can always have something to do.
I have things that I want to do that I don't necessarily want to be paid for. Like, I want to be able to do my art and not worry about any form of payment or labor associated with that. And, you know, yeah, my crochet hobbies, like reading, I want to spend hours reading per day. I just feel like there's so many things that I could do for longer if I didn't work so many hours per day.
Awesome. I want to hear from somebody I don't usually hear from. David. Hey, David. You with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
David, do you like the idea of a 15-hour work week?
I feel like it depends on a lot of factors, you know, like how does that compare to quality of life, you know? Am I getting the money that I'm working for in a 15-hour work week, or am I getting enough to actually?
Excellent question, David. Let's presume you're fine financially, but that's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like as just a people, we would have a lot more time to focus on the arts and the growth of technology and everything, you know? Like, yeah, I feel like it'd be good.
All right, so there's another vote. Louis, I don't hear from you often, Louis. Do you want to say something? How do you feel about a 15-hour work week?
I'm not sure. I don't really want to work at all. I just kind of want to like take a break for a while.
Perfect.
But
well, Louis, what are you gonna do with your time? What are you gonna do with your time, Louis?
Probably work on some projects that I ain't had time to do before. Maybe catch up on sleep.
Good. We'd sleep more. Would we be healthier?
I think so. I mean, like, even just like physical manifestations of stress can be so detrimental to one's health. And obviously, working long hours and working physically in like demanding jobs is a really easy way to increase the body's stress.
Yeah. Jesse, why do you, sitting at a desk is horrible for you. I only saw the first clause first. Awesome. Jennifer, what are you thinking? 15 hours. What are you going to do over in PG with the rest of your time?
I don't know. I
Go
mean,
to Six Flags.
I don't fucking like Six Flags.
Oh, okay. So.
It's okay. That was the spot though. I guess like that question made me start thinking about like how driven are we to do the things that we do when there isn't like a monetary value associated with it? Or I feel like there's just like touching on that topic of like the need to monetize like every hobby that you have, or like people's need to do that. So like I often see like people around me, or like my friends, they often like pick up these like hobbies, but with the direct intention of like monetizing it. So it's like, what is it? I don't know. It's like when you break down like the work week, because like 40-hour work week is just like you're so occupied all the time. But when you break it down, it's, what do I do with my time?
Right.
What do you do when there's like when what you're doing has no like monetary value?
the side hustle. I think Chloe was telling us about earlier in this class, the side hustle. Got to have your side hustle. Sean would like to bake. I didn't see that coming. Okay, good. Baking is good.
Yeah, man, get baked. 420 blaze it.
Okay, all right. That's what you meant. I see. Okay.
No, that's not what I meant.
I'm just kidding. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody upset at the idea of 15-hour work week? It's okay. You're allowed to say so. Free
I
country.
feel like it's a little short.
I'm sorry?
I feel like it's a little short.
It's pretty damn short. That's 3 hours a work day, in case you were
Makes me a
wondering.
little nervous. Feels like something's wrong.
It's like 9 to 12 and you're done. You're like, okay.
No, that's the capitalist society nagging at you. Don't listen to it.
Well,
Well,
the thing is,
was
I
a-
work comparing my life as a student to the brief time I held like a 9 to 5 internship, vaguely similar to what I would be working in as my career. Like
Yeah.
it was really nice to just kind of have the day occupied and just do stuff that was work, but that I enjoyed. And then at 5 o'clock, it was like, okay, I'm free every day at 5 o'clock. I know like I can go play basketball for 3 hours because the courts won't close. I can go get like a smoothie somewhere. I could skip all that and drive south to like the mountains or something. Whereas a full day, when I'm left to my own devices, I just want to sleep all day. And so I do that. I end up missing out on most of the day and I don't cherish all the time that I do have. And then like frantically try and make it worthwhile in the evening by doing something fun, which then repeats the cycle. So maybe I'm just not disciplined enough and I suck at living, but like I feel like having the structure of work, at least at this point in my life, is great. So that's
Yeah.
why I'm a huge proponent for making work something that you want to do rather than like dreading having to make money. But I understand if people can't do that. You know, it's not everyone can do what they want to do.
Awesome. Thank you for that very honest assessment. Chloe.
I mean, I was just gonna say, like, I think so much of that idea is defined by how, like, the society we currently live in, you know, like if we were in a society where that was normal, when you are not working, you wouldn't spend so much time feeling guilty for not working or feeling like you have to make the absolute most of your resting time. Like, I think that is such a huge contributor to why we feel like we waste resting time, is because we're like, oh, I have this time off, I have to live it up, or I have to do exactly what's going to make me feel so good. Whereas, like, I think if it was just normal to work 15 hours a week and then do whatever with the rest of your week, you wouldn't constantly worry about, like, am I using my time in the perfect way to make use of my rest, which is still making use of your resting.
Yep. Got to regenerate yourself for more work, right? Jesse.
Yeah, I was just thinking that just given this like hypothetical, very far-fetched idea, I imagine like there would still be an opportunity to work overtime if you're really uncomfortable working 15 hours a week. Like maybe just you would be only legally obligated to work 15 hours a week, but like you could work more if you wanted to, which I imagine a lot of like bag chasers would be doing. And if that's like their form of fulfillment, then they can do that. And then everyone else like me can just like not and do whatever makes me happy, which is not working, you know?
Yes.
So, no. I don't know the exact confines of this hypothetical, you know, arrangement. Like, are we forced to only work 15 hours a week and then we have to go do our own thing, or like what?
Good point. Good question. I don't know. I think it's good that it's up in the air. In a way, David kind of set the parameters early on. Like, one of the key questions is, what are you working for? Right? Chloe said it's cultural. How much are you earning? I kind of gave a very innocuous and ambiguous answer to David, and I just said, you are earning to have enough. What the hell is that, right? What is that? That's an alien concept in America. You never have enough, right? There's always more. in terms of stuff, in terms of professional prestige, ambition, right? I never feel like I have enough time to write, which is what I do, but I consider that. Do I consider that work? I don't know. This gets to the question he deals with about Marx in the next chapter, leisure and labor, you know? Ideally, the two mix. This is why I think in a way you all are kind of blessed in your chosen profession, because you have a profession that, you know, if things work out, they meet. This question is totally different if I ask this at Loyola or Hopkins. They're not artists, right? What is an accountant major at Loyola going to do with a 15-hour work week, right? What are you going to do with the rest of your time? Jesus, that's different, right? I noticed Chloe puts a good point in the chat, right? If it's a 15-hour work week, we wouldn't have to have a 5-day work week though, right? Maybe you could pack all your 15 hours into one day and then hit the road, right? And Jesse is excited again. Jessica is excited. Ella, you want to tell us what you did?
I mean, like, I
If you don't mind me asking.
I mean, like, I was working like an like sort of internship. Like, I was doing illustrations for an author. And like in the beginning, like that was the only thing that I was doing. And the rest of the time I was just kind of like bopping around. But by the end of the semester, I had made like far more personal work than I've probably ever made. Like I made probably like 30 illustrations. I don't know.
Good. And presumably you had your own pattern of self-discipline and scheduling, right?
Yeah, it was just kind of like in the beginning, it was kind of difficult because I didn't see a ton of a reason to be doing anything outside of like work for other people. But then eventually I was like, oh wait, this is the time that I can be doing stuff for me. And so I would like wake up in the morning and like just like work for fun, I guess.
Good.
And it was nice.
Yeah. And Jessica thinks, thank you. Jessica thinks it'd also be more volunteering. Trying to catch up with all the stuff in the chat here. You know, one thing I'd have to say to what Ella says is it's interesting. My kids are just about college age now too. And, you know, generally your age, like the stuff is piled on, right? Like you don't take a break, because if you take a break, you fall behind, right? But what's interesting, what Ella points out is it can also be valuable to have unscripted time, right? Because then you know, there are valuable lessons you can learn in that period too, right? I would also point out that the work week, the average work week in France is 35 hours. Speaking about culture, right? There's a very different culture of work in Europe. I was amazed. I was listening to, I don't know if you guys know about this, but Tesla is opening its first factory in Germany. They're opening a factory outside Berlin. Why they're doing it, I guess they like the location and the high-skilled labor. But man, I'm amazed they're forging ahead, because they have to deal with the very powerful German unions. Germany has the most powerful labor unions on earth. Part of the reason is because they have a management model over there. If you notice, in Mazzucato pointed this out, German companies are unique because labor unions have seats on the board. They have a say in management. We don't do that in the States. Tesla has agreed, I think, just about to the union contract in Germany, and I believe it is a 28-hour work week. I am still in shock that Elon said yes to that. So it's not only automation that can bring this about, it's also unions, right? Unions good. But you know, there's also the hidden issue of like, what all do you need? What all do you want? What all are you working for? Anybody else want to chime in on the 15 hours? How about this? I mean, silly Keynes thought back in 1930 that in 2021, we would be working 15 hours a week. Why hasn't it turned out that way? What did he get wrong? I think we may have, you know, we may have said in our conversation some of these things, but just to be clear, I mean, why do you think this didn't happen?
I personally, I was thinking about this earlier in the class, but I was just thinking about the rise in economic disparity between the classes. And I'm not sure if that's like more extreme now than it was in the 30s. I mean, I think it is, but I know that there was still some really wealthy people. But I was just thinking about, you know, when you automate something or when you have technology that reduces the amount of work you need to do. Like if you lived in a rural community in the late 1800s, when you're still incorporating some states into the United States, like you're out there making your own food, cooking your own food, sometimes making your own clothes, trading and bartering with people, and then doing like limited economic activities, and you're working all the time. You're building your own house. You're like essentially creating your life out of your bare hands and a handful of friends. And like moving on from that, still doing more work, like things are cheap relative to inflation, like people can afford to live somewhat. And now it feels like there actually has been an excess in capital generated from more efficient systems and production, but rather than people working less, in the sense that now we don't have to do all of these things that we used to do and we can relax, we're working a similar amount, and then all of that excess money and efficiency goes to the people who own the means of production and like manage that system. And so in reality, everyone should be working a little bit less than we are now, but in general, there should be less of a class disparity. At least that's how I'm interpreting it. I don't know if that makes sense.
I got you. Thank you. Sean?
Yeah, I remember something that Freddie said. I think it was at the start of the rentism chapter, where he was like, we shouldn't assume that just because we are capable of eliminating extraneous work that we will, because some people like having power and want to maintain that power.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I know I've heard like around just in like like leftist spaces that like a lot of the work that like currently goes on in the 40-hour work week is unnecessary, and that like a lot of people could get their jobs done faster, and so their time is just kind of filled up with like nonsense, basically, like completely meaningless, trivial tasks that like upper management likes to impose on people below them.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Olivia, what do you mean? If you don't mind me asking.
I would kind of just going off of what Sean said, like I feel like capitalism isn't gonna mix with this, because I remember a question where he was like, who owns the robots?
Yeah.
Because whoever owns the robots kind of owns society in that way. And so if we still have like this class struggle, then we're just going to transfer more power to the people who own the robots. So it's capitalism kind of gets in the way of this like utopia and that we're kind of saying is possible.
Yeah, I mean, the word that comes to mind is precarity. You know, life in 21st century American capitalist society is precarious, much in the way that Lazzarato meant it, like that it's weighed down by debt. How did we get here? I don't know, but part of the narrative in this country is that up into the 70s, the unions were delivering that kind of security that we see now in Germany. They were, the unions were securing the kind of labor where you could work reasonable hours, leave your job behind you, like just walk out and not be weighed down by it, go do other things and retire at the age of 55, without a college degree and the associated debt. That leaves in the 70s and is replaced. Industrial jobs are replaced largely by the service sector, which are lower paying jobs. One of the hidden stories in Lazzarato that we didn't really dwell on is, wages have been stagnant since the 1980s for the most part. Middle class and working class wages have been stagnant. People have a lot more shit, right? Consumption has risen exponentially. People buy more shit. What has filled the gap? Credit cards, debt. That's what it is. People are indebted. And, that's why we see the hustle, at least in part. And I'll go back to the point that I was making earlier. So much of it relies on what we have to have. What do we have? What do you have to have? I mean, this is not I know how you guys are likely to answer. I've been telling you all to go to Detroit for weeks and you're all like, yeah, maybe. But most Americans are like, I need that. Oh, Sean, you need so much more. I mean, I know what you need. You don't need much. I gotcha. And you want a little oven to bake in. I get it. But most people, you know what they need. Look around you, right? They need the 3,000 square foot house with the plush carpeting, 4 bedrooms, exercise room, breakfast nook, 3-car garage. They can't live in a shelter. They can't live in a hovel. They won't. I love this phenomenon called the tiny homes. You guys know the tiny homes? I'm like obsessed with them. Although I don't think I would ever live in one. They're tiny. They're like 70 square feet. You should look up. Some of you seem to know what I'm talking about. Tiny homes are un-American. I'm sorry. Like, that's, for most Americans, that's going the wrong direction, right? Because you have to get rid of all your shit to fit in there in the first place. David's question I go back to, the 15-hour work week works perfectly if we're all in our own tiny home, right? Then we're good. Then we're cool. But as long as our demands are exorbitant, as long as we need the new iPhone, even though our old one's working fine, even though we, or we need the new Tesla, or I don't know, or we need X. I don't even know what the likely consumer goods are anymore. Like, people have needs. In a ways, it is the American dream. We talked about this class. American dream is that you got to do better than previous generations. I'm just looking at Evan's comment here. Yep. I know, seriously. Who needs a goddamn hot dog at 2 a.m? I go back to what I said earlier. Shops should be closed on Sunday. Sorry. Go to church or walk in the park. I mentioned to you when my dad was growing up in Belgium, they did not drive cars on Sunday. I love it. Close the Beltway. Everybody rollerblade the Beltway. Why not? Why do stores have to be open at 5 p.m. Thanksgiving night? Why? Can we not have one goddamn fucking day without shops? Why do we need 24-hour? I know, Chloe, but it makes me mad. I'm not even a big Thanksgiving patriot guy. Like I just want I just want one day. Just give me one day. Anyway, and Labor Day. All right, I'm ranting. Anybody want to chime in? Questions, comments, observations?
I'm looking at some of these tiny houses, man, and I'm gonna be honest, they look cozy as hell.
They do, I know. I was just reading about a different kind of tiny house the other day. It is a fully sustainable off-grid house for $300,000. I think it's about the size of a studio apartment, but you don't need to hook it up to any grid. If I were a monk and had $300,000, that's what I would do. Tiny homes are cheap, right?
Are you familiar with Earthships?
Oh yeah, what is that again?
It's similar to what you said. I mean, it's basically a sustainable home made out of renewable or found materials and earth, like a lot of times rammed earth. And there's typically a greenhouse section, like a huge window feature that lets you grow your own food, rain harvesting system, solar energy, any other types of renewable energy resources that you want to include with it. But it's all like handmade, built on a budget, but highly functional and very grounded and pleasant to live in. But they were originally developed in New Mexico, but they've seen
Would you say they were?
Earthships.
Oh, okay. There's like in Turkey there are these homes made from like some sort of clay or something. And like in the summer inside is cool and like in the winter it's hot and there's like this whole thing about it, and I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, it's the same thing with these because they a lot of times will also be built into the earth, but the clay like you're talking about, and then the other like thick walls and building materials thermoregulate. It's like living in a cave, essentially.
Yeah, so cool. I wish.
Awesome.
They're pretty accessible, to be honest with you. Just depends on like where you live and how willing you are to accept the responsibility to make it. But I'm honestly, I get really frustrated here on the East Coast going through suburban neighborhoods and things because it's just, I know so many people are aspiring to want to live there, but they look like prison to me. Like I would hate to have a beautiful house that's just in the middle of nothing interesting, that's just sucking money and energy, and just I don't know. Maybe I need more people to have in the house or something, but I hate that.
I completely agree.
I mean, I fully agree. I was gonna say that the fact that people want to live in suburbs for like the schooling in general, and then the fact that the education system is so shit in the first place, it's like, why would I choose to have neighbors so that my kid can like hate the school they're going to anyway, and also hate the fact that they're not around anything? Like, ugh.
Spoken like a true suburbanite.
I come from a town. I come from Virginia Beach, Virginia, and it's basically like entirely like the whole thing's a suburb basically. And it actually does have a very great school system. And I would not go back, but that's because of my own personal feelings. But I think it's like a pretty wonderful place, especially for raising a family. Like the only thing that I personally don't like about like suburbia is again just like the waste of like having a home so big to fill it with stuff that you don't need, and it's consuming so much energy and so much resources. Like that's the only part where they lose me. But I completely understand like wanting to have a space and mark it as your own and have it to be somewhere nice enough that you want to bring other people into the world. Like I think it makes sense, and I think it's nice if that's what people aspire to.
I think my comment is more, this might be like a West thing, but like to me, I look here at the amount of space inside a home as a waste. And to me, I feel like aspiration should be like land ownership and location, and like really priding yourself in like your relationship with your little slice of the earth. But I think that that's just my interest. I mean, it's just confusing to me because like I grew up, I was technically in like a suburban area when I grew up, and we had a great school system, but we had a great school system not because of where I was. It was a great school system because it was a charter school, and people would drive in from an hour. And I used to think they were crazy until my mom moved like 20 minutes from the US border, and I spent a lot of time out in the wilderness and just in really interesting areas, culturally and environmentally. And like I kind of broke out of that bubble. And to me, I don't know if there's a choice here on the East Coast. I don't know if there's enough land because there's such a huge population and it's so small. But it just seems like amount of money you have to put in to have this home in this specific area, and you're just around such similar people, or you don't associate with them, and you don't care about the land you're in. There's no like sense of I don't know. It just I just don't understand it, and I think it's just because I'm not from here and I just haven't lived through it. So.
One of the most powerful ideas I have been reading about lately is an idea called bioregionalism. And I'm going to do a shout out to an author named Jenny Odell. I teach her in my political theory class. If you're looking for a fantastic book to read, buy it immediately and read it this summer. She's a wonderful writer. She's actually an artist. I believe she teaches in the Stanford D School, trained at Berkeley. Jennifer, you were in my class, I think.
I'm sorry. They're kind of, my dogs are going off and I can't hear you.
Oh, did you read Jenny Odell? Were you in my political theory class in the?
Yes, I was in your the Odell. Say the whole name. I need to hear the whole name.
I forget the name of the book. It's escaping me, but she talks. I mean, she talks a lot about the distraction of the attention economy. But one of the things she also talks about is bioregionalism. She's from the West Coast. And I think it's a very powerful argument. She points out how we're profoundly disconnected from our environs. You know, I know where Rachel is from, and I'm from around here too. And the Maryland suburbs kind of disgust me. I grew up in the Maryland suburbs, and the reason they disgust me is because very few people, there's a lot of people who aren't from here, and I don't feel like they really know what Maryland is or is like, you know? What's you want to know what bioregionalism is? Easiest question. What's in season right now? Do you know? Because if you do, then you have a sense of bioregionalism. The problem is most people don't. What kind of trees grow here? What kind of fruits, right? Jenny Odell argues this is very important. Crab. Where does most motherfucking crab come from? In Baltimore, Thailand. Not even from the goddamn bay, right? But people don't know. People don't pay attention. They don't give a shit. People think shrimp are from the bay. Silly. You know, we don't know. We don't pay attention to our region, right? Any case,
You don't need to though, because like it's America. You can find like anything, anytime. And I mean, when I went back to Turkey and I was like, let's buy broccoli. And they were like, are you crazy? Or like peaches. I was like, no peaches. And they were like, there are no peaches over the winter. And like, I'm like, I lived there for 17 years. And like, now I'm here, you know, I like forgot all about that because like you can just have anything anytime here, which is.
I get very angry when I see peaches out of season. Do you know why? Go have yourself.
I think so.
What?
I think so, but I don't know. But
go ahead.
You tell. Okay. Well, like from my perspective, peaches here are like really hard, and I don't like them hard. I like them really, really soft, and like you can find them really soft here. But yeah, when I like buy them in Turkey, they're like so soft and so juicy and delicious. And like here, they're like apples, and I don't like that.
It's what Jennifer said. Do yourself a favor, have a goddamn peach in season and come back to me. And then you will start to wonder, why the hell are they selling this shit in January? I could go off on cantaloupes too. My daughter was demanding a cantaloupe. I'm like, all right. I went over to Trader Joe's, got her a cantaloupe. predictably, that thing was a piece of shit. It was February. So I told my daughter, like, what the hell did you expect? No, I'm just kidding. I was nice to her. But, you know, the American mindset is we get this shit all the time, all year round. No, you're not supposed to. That is not what God intended. Come on now.
Were you the one that showed us the greenhouses in Maine?
No, but I'm intrigued.
Yeah, so okay, maybe I was just late at night looking at random shit, but basically I mean, I kind of knew that this was happening, but like I didn't really know any specifics. But basically in Maine, if you look up Maine tomato farms, there's this incredible picture of the tomatoes growing at night in huge greenhouses. There's some of like the biggest buildings in the world require insane amounts of electricity.
Yeah.
And all of that power, I think it comes from a hydroelectric dam nearby or something. But basically, there's just a bunch of tomato growers, and they keep the tomatoes in season by growing them in Maine inside of buildings with lights on at night. And
well, as a gardener, I do know about this issue very well. I'm a very annoying shopper. When I go to Target and I'm looking at clothes, I immediately look at the label. Where is it made? When I'm at Trader Joe's, I look to see where it's grown. You know where most tomatoes in America are grown off season? Canada. If you drive from Buffalo to Toronto, you will see greenhouses as far as the eye can see. Similar to what you saw in Maine, I guess, Daniel. I wasn't actually aware they were populating Maine. Tomatoes are not supposed to grow in Canada off season. They're barely supposed to grow in Canada in season. In Europe, off season, most tomatoes come from Holland. When you leave Amsterdam, you'll see greenhouses everywhere because they're growing tomatoes in the middle of winter. What the hell is going on here? And just like the peach, I can make a pitch for, that rhymed, a in-season tomato, the bomb. My wife has gotten so used to, I'm going to brag a little bit. I grow good tomatoes. And my tomatoes so damn good. When the season's done, my wife's like, I can't have any more. I can't have any of the store-bought. So, in any case, I don't know. How did we get on this? Because Daniel was going off about our suburbs. I'm sorry?
My grandma also grows tomatoes, and they're amazing.
It is amazing, but I mean, these are we have very strange consumer demands in this country. It's the Costco universe. You go to Costco, every fruit and vegetable on earth is in season all the time, right? It's all there. That's not the way it used to be. That's not the way it's supposed to be. Any case. Okay, Sean. Well, you can make ketchup and store that shit, right? Once upon a time, that's what people did, right? You had to can everything. So this brings me back to the 15-hour week. If I really were working 15 hours a week, I guess I would garden, grow my own stuff, and then I'd be busy canning it. If you go up to my dad's farm in Pennsylvania, the area, the farms around it, every single German farmstead, the basement was in the cellar was all cans as far as the eye could see. We went in once. This old lady was leaving her farmhouse, and she had canned beans, asparagus, tomatoes that she had done herself. There was, and of course you would keep your apples because apples store. You would keep potatoes because they store, and then you would have. I've never seen this before. It was a special like shelf with little holes in it and vials of water underneath. They would snip the grape vines and with the clusters and stick the cluster in the water so that the clusters would keep. Amazing. Oh, yeah, Chloe, it's back to that question whether it's work. See, it is work for me to write books. I'm always paranoid that if I'm not writing, there's something wrong with me, but I enjoy it. So I don't know, maybe it's not work, right? Anyway, all right, I've been ranting. Sorry, guys. I get very passionate when we talk about tomatoes and peaches. I can't help it. but seriously, do yourself a favor. Read that book and have a peach in season. Sorry. We have a few more minutes. I want to launch into something else. We've already gotten pretty deep into automation, but he does raise a good issues in that first chapter I want to get into. Just to talk a little bit about, what he's talking about here in this book. Someone made this point, but on page 22, like he says, how we navigate the world, the future of automation and climate change, is shadowed by and enduring these other crises. These are two crises. How we endure these crises and handle them is predicated on how we deal with another crisis, which is the crisis of capitalist class and property relations on page 22. These are always going to inform the discussion. Someone mentioned this earlier, right? Who owns the robots? That's going to be a major concern. Let me see. I might as well just call your attention to that passage in the middle of page 22. He says, who benefits from automation and who loses is ultimately a consequence not of the robots, but who owns them. Hence, it's impossible to understand the unfolding of the ecological crisis and developments of automation without understanding a third crisis through which both are mediated, the crisis of the capitalist economy. For neither climate change nor automation can be understood as problems in and of themselves. What is so dangerous is the way they manifest themselves in an economy dedicated to maximizing profits and growth, and in which money and power are held in the hands of a tiny elite. We could have a nice future with 15-hour work weeks if we weren't so goddamn hungry consumers, and if we weren't prodded to be, and if we, some in our society didn't have these outrageous ambitions for work and profit that drive them on. And what he's going to do in this book is he's going to anticipate, 4 futures after capitalism. He gives a little graph at the bottom of page 29, indicating, the 4 options are according to abundance, scarcity, equality, and hierarchy. And we talk about communism first, which is, a world of equality and abundance. Of course, whether we have abundance or scarcity is up in the air, right? It's not predetermined. Climate change can be managed in a way that there's abundance, for example. But again, it depends on our power relations. So let me dive into the chapter on communism. He opens up with a discussion about work and identity. Here's a quote on page, 37. He says, even when we hate our jobs, we may still lean on them as sources of identity and social worth. Work as a source of identity and social worth, right? I think we've been talking about that. I mean, how true is that for you? I mean, do you feel like your work is your identity? Anybody want to speak to that?
I mean, I've honestly been thinking about the opposite, which is how much has my work altered my identity?
Yeah.
Like I couldn't really tell you like exactly who I am as a person, but I've had a strong sense of self since before coming here to learn product design. But I've noticed that as I get more indoctrinated into this way of thinking and designing and making that something that I think about more prevalently, it's kind of made me a bit more serious and stern and like changed my outlook a lot, to the point where I'm becoming self-aware of it, and I don't really like that.
Oh.
But at the same time, like, I'm proud of that being a part of me. And
Yeah.
I still like doing it. So it's kind of I'm just aware of it taking over who I am, and I want to kind of make sure that I do enough of everything else that I enjoy and think enough about other things that it doesn't consume me.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you, Daniel. Olivia has a nice comment, right? Yeah, when you're my age and you walk into a party, you're like, so what do you do for a living? Right. And you guys are asked, what are you gonna do with that degree? What are you gonna do with that sculpture degree? I was a philosophy major. I got the same scorn. What are you gonna do with a philosophy degree? Yeah, I guess it's a little premature to ask you guys yet if you identify with your work. You know, Chloe writes, as a printmaker, I was aspiration working as a printer of others' work. I view my craft as a reflection of myself, which I think is work, but in a different way than some other artists would define it. Gosh, that's an interesting point. For you all, your work cuts even closer to home, right? You know, it's funny. There are many jobs out there which you can do and then walk away from, you know? I imagine, I could be wrong, you can tell me. I gave a caricature earlier of a factory job where I was like, I'm gonna make widgets all day, go home, I won't think about it anymore, it won't consume me. Maybe service jobs, I think, might be like that. Like if I was a Walmart cashier, I don't bring that job home with me, right? But especially under the world of Zoom and COVID, right? My job as a philosopher, professor, and writer, that goes with me everywhere. I sit on my silence and my kids' soccer games, and I have to shoot off emails or write notes. I think with you guys, it's something similar, right? Like when you, wherever you are, you know, you could tell me if I'm wrong about this, but I think wherever you are, you may take your job with you, huh? In that respect, like your craft.
I think a lot of it depends on like the kind of work that you're doing. Like I think a painter whose aspiration is to be a studio and like gallery artist is going to have a very different definition from like a freelance illustrator who's going to have a very different definition from like a concept artist who's going to have a very different, like, I think it's so interesting to think about the different ways that your work can either define you or just be a part of your life as an artist. Like for me personally, my work, like images that I make, are not really like my identity in terms of like work. Like my work is separate from my personal art practice, or that's what I aspire to. But you know, for someone who is a painter, their practice is their livelihood, or I would assume so. So that's going to be very different, and I imagine probably much more entwined.
Yeah. I imagine you guys get inspirations in odd places, right? Or at odd times. I've been teaching MICA students for long enough. I have an inkling, right? I stand by my claim, you know. I think there's some jobs you don't leave your job behind, and I think yours is probably one. But he goes on to discuss how, you know, this is often an unhealthy identification, you know. He talks about how, you know, the study about why the unemployed are unhappy, and yet when they're retired, they're not. And it's because, you know, we have this inclination in this society to link work with self-worth, you know. I don't think Republicans help much when they when they, you know, venerate this culture of work, right? You have to work to get your health benefits, for example. You know, you have to work. And if we're told that we're not working, you know, then that like dings us for our self-worth. So, I mean, one of the questions we've been discussing here is like, if you know, on that note, if you had a 15-hour week, I guess we would be less inclined to identify ourselves with our work, maybe. I don't know. You work 15 hours, you go to a week, you go to a party and say, are you, what, you know, people say, what do you do? What are you going to say? I guess Sean would say, well, I bake, I cook, I paint, I floss my teeth, you know? Or the better question is anybody even going to say that anymore? We're at 15 hours. People aren't going to be like, that's what I do for a living. They'll be like, so what you do today? Tell me what you did today. Right? This sounds like a very peace, love world we're in. I want to take up this, just a few minutes left. I want to hit on this last issue here pertaining to automation. Next week, universal basic income. Very excited. Big thing to talk about, but we don't have enough time. He has an amazing quotes about UBI that are just kind of mind-blowing. I have never thought about UBI before. I'm interested now. But about automation, okay, major big issue is what jobs will be automated or what will not. Which jobs are safe, everybody? Anybody want to make some proposals?
Architecture for personal clients.
Architecture for personal clients.
You have to deal with so much bullshit from the clients.
You sound like someone experienced.
Just channeling my mom's rage.
Jesse, comedians, cool. Scientists. Sean, okay. I guess so. Someone just say robot technicians to get it over with. Then we got that down. School teachers, hopefully. I don't know, right? Depends.
Honestly, I feel like you can have robots work on other robots really well.
Okay, thank you. To Jessica's point, like I wonder, like, I guess it depends on your vision or pedagogical philosophy, right? Like, what are you expecting in countries where rote learning is very important, memorization, robots can do fine. This setting, I'd like to think not, right? Therapists, yes. Good Lord. Daphne, I hope therapists remain human. He gets into this discussion on page 46. He mentions caregivers for the elderly, you know. Now, this is not technically something that robots can't do. Presumably, it is something robots can do. The real question is, are you outraged at the thought? Like, now we're just talking about, we're not talking about jobs that are like beyond their own possibility. We're talking about jobs that are beyond our moral orbit. Here's a nice quote on page 46 at the bottom. He says, so perhaps the danger is less that such work will be automated, but that it won't, right? This is Zeynep Tufekci. Daphne, this is a very important Turkish American theorist right now. She writes quite a bit, and she makes that quote in the middle of 46, right? She imagines that, like, oh, that job won't be automated because you can always find people to do that. So perhaps, so this is where the prompts this quote at the bottom of 46. So perhaps the danger is less that such work will be automated, but that it won't be automated. And an underpaid, feminized workforce will be all that's left of wage labor. Some parts of caregiving, the changing of bedpans and the like, are the sort of unpleasant work that seems ideally suited for automation, but many elderly people rely on a nurse for emotional connection as much as for physical maintenance, right? What might bar us from going fully automated? Jobs that require emotional connection, right? But will that leave those jobs still to be taken care of by, by people who don't, or get stuck with crappy jobs, right? Yeah, Jessica, that is a good point. In policing, sentencing, and parole, yeah, very controversial, that issue. Who's the company that this very controversial company that is pioneering that? One last point here. There's also the issue of whether some jobs don't just require human touch and attention. And he asks, why does that connection have to come from a human servant, right? Grandma can get used to a robot, right? Which sounds crazy, but here's another nice quote in the bottom of 47. Taking care of each other, overcoming our isolation and loneliness is at the essence of being human. But is what we want a world where we are all paid for that activity? Or one where we are freed from the need to work for wages so we can explore what it means to take care of ourselves and one another? My sympathies are with the second possibility and with the new possibilities and problems that might unfold in such a world. I think I'm gonna have to pick it up there next week, because this is kind of a bombshell he ends with, or we're ending with. What if the robot, you have these caregivers taking care of the elderly, and we insist on humans for the human touch. Are they enjoying their job changing bedpans? Not in the slightest. Do they feel generous with their human touch and connection? Probably not. Guess what? Why don't we get the robots to do those things, and then we are freed to go sit with grandma? And grandma will turn and look at us and say, oh, what are you doing here? Thank you for coming to see me, right? Or anybody is free to go sit with people you're not paid. Isn't that better? Right?
But it's not like grandmas like actually want a person to like change their diapers anyway, So it's not like, yeah.
You're feeling it. So let's let the robots do that, and free us up. And then we have the time out of our generosity. Grandma doesn't want to look next to her and see someone, like that's paid to be with her. That doesn't fill her with joy. What fills her with joy is when I sit there and I'm free to be there.
Yeah, definitely. Also, not being in a nursing home, maybe. I don't know. It's
bring her home. Bring her home, and bring the robots home too. Okay, I have one last question here, and then I will let you go. He says at the top 48, like 47, 48, his point is, we'll be freed to spend more time, and we can be generous with our human connection while the robots do all the dirty work. My question is, will we? When we are freed, what will we do? Will we do this? Maybe. That would be great. But he strikes a little bit of a utopian tone here in 48, right? Dream, is this really what we will do with our free time? All right. Oh, Chloe, good point.
I think about stuff like that a lot, because like the idea of aging sounds really nice until you get to the point where you are so old that you like require assistance. And I mean, at this point, it would be from another human being to do things, and that must make you feel so like I've heard, like my great grandmother talked a lot about it at the end of her life, like how she felt so like lesser because she depended so much. And I wonder how those feelings would change if it was like a machine that's just kind of like, helping you in a medical way, like rather than like another human being who you're like constantly worried about because they're depending on you, or you're depending on them. Sorry.
Yeah, good point. Look at this. We're ending on an upbeat note on automation. I didn't expect that. I really thought this would go elsewhere, but I am intrigued. Okay, everybody. Well, I am done for the day. I'm going to let you all fly away, okay? You know what you need to do for next week. You need to finish the phrase book. You have your reading responses. I will get your papers back to you. I will also post the final paper topics so we could talk about those next week, okay? And I believe that's everything. So I have a great week. I will stick around if anybody needs to say anything to me, okay? All right. See you later, everybody. Great conversation today. It was really interesting. I loved it.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
See ya.
I think I wanted to stick around. I think you.
Yeah,
said-
yeah, go for it.
Yeah,
Let me just
so-
stop recording.